Yeah,
basically.
don't go and like defame the government, this kind of thing right now. It's not the best time to do it.
Especially when Suen's tag says public service. Like,
Yes, you know.
Yeah, got public on the comment. I don't anyhow.
yeah.
No pressure, no pressure. Technically, Louis, I was in the public service and I'm not right now.
Really?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because
Oh,
I'm
because
freelance.
of
I'm freelance
your-
with GovTech. Yeah.
Oh.
So I'm not officially under OSA right now.
It's
Oh no,
your
mercenary. Okay, good. We should talk
the-
later.
HR, who you report to for HR.
Mercenary, excellent.
Okay, so it's 7 already and I'm gonna start. So welcome everyone. I hope you've had dinner. If you haven't had dinner, right, you can eat while we chat. Okay, so I happen to have my food right here. So if you do see me munching this down, it's just so that my wife doesn't scold me for not eating the food that she makes. So if you all need food, you can just go ahead and eat. Okay. Other things is because this is a Zoom call and like we're almost likely at home and stuff, there could be certain disruptions. For example, internet maybe not very stable because maybe your brother or sister playing Dota, then taking out the bandwidth. So then like your thing might lag. So if that happens, right, if there's any network issue or network spike kind of stuff, we will wait for you for like 5-10 seconds. But more than that, right, I'm just gonna move on because nothing's more awkward than waiting for someone whose network is not working. And like just like, can hear, that kind of stuff. So if that happens, just know that I'll probably skip. We'll probably skip ahead until your network like gets its shit together or something. So that's one. The other thing is there could be other noises and stuff like that. So it'll be good to like mute yourself if you are not kind of speaking. That will just ensure that people who are watching get it clear. In terms of the design of this particular panel, we have 2 students with us, and there are other students who are watching our live stream as well, and they'll be asking questions on the YouTube live. The purpose for this is so that we can have a more intimate, coherent conversation during our Zoom call here. And the questions as they come in the live chat, I will weave them in when it's most appropriate. So it's like feels less disruptive. Okay. Okay, so it's already 7 and I'm just gonna start now. So hi, my name is Louis. I run this organization called Praxium where our goal really is to help students like maybe Clarence, like Katrina, who haven't entered uni or maybe are already in uni to really figure out what you want to do after you finish your studies. Whether you want to work as a designer or as a public servant, as an entrepreneur, whatever it is, our goal really is to help you get there and perhaps to help you explore how, even if you are studying something different from your aspirations, are you still able to achieve those aspirations? Or if you're still in school, is there anything you can do to get ahead or to get some, to start your career in a sense? You know the cliche of how the entry-level job asks for 3 years experience, and then like you say like, what the hell? Actually can one, it's actually not very difficult. So we are here really to help students kind of clear that hurdle. We are doing this in partnership with another organization called SGExams. So SGExams is actually a student community that started up because they found that students don't really have a place to like kind of mingle and get together across schools and all that. So SGExams, really cool organization. They are available, they are accessible on Reddit. They also have a Telegram channel. They also have a Discord server. So do check them out. In fact, the reason why we're doing this panel is partly because on SGExams, a lot of times students are asking questions about what course should I apply for? If I apply for this course, then how? So a lot of these kind of questions, which is why Praxium decided to partner with them in creating this series of content. This is our fourth in the series of panel discussions that we've had. The first few were engineering, media, arts and design. Those were the previous 3. This is the 4th. So if any of those were interesting to you, you can check that out as well. Okay, so this is the one on general studies. And general studies is a bit of a vague word because we were just trying to find a term to capture the idea of people who study humanities, people who study social sciences, who go to like FASS in NUS or something. So these are kind of areas of studies, right, where a lot of times if you ask teachers or you ask adults and parents and friends, they'll ask you, oh, you study this, then at the end of the day, you'll be a teacher, is it? Or something, or that's your only option. And there's nothing wrong with being a teacher, but really there are so many more options. And what we are doing today is to explore what else can you really do if you study these fields. And this is really just to shine light on that. So again, my name is Louis and from Praxium. I'll move on to perhaps letting each of our panelists here do an introduction, and I'll be taking notes so that you don't have to take notes. Just so you know, all of the content here will also be summarized as in a form of an article, which allows people to just read through if they don't want to watch the whole live stream. That's for like people in like outside. Okay, so introductions. I'm gonna just briefly mention that Siwei here, he's an entrepreneur, he runs his own organization. Sherilyn works in this organization called SIF, Singapore International Foundation. Suen works in the public service, or was, she can elaborate later if she wants. Then we have Clarence, who's in J1, and Patrina, who's waiting to enter uni. So these are the people we have, but I'll let them do more introductions on their own. Anyone wants to go next?
Okay, well, I'll go, I think. So hi everyone, my name is Siwei. I'm a teacher. No lah, just kidding lah. I run a team at Living Theories. So Living Theories, we focus on gamification as a strategy and a consultancy for engagement solutions in Singapore and Asia at large. So we tend to run training programs as well as work on curated solutions and projects for our clients. Generally, we work a lot with government agencies lah. I graduated from Linguistics and Multilingual Studies in NTU in like 5 years ago.
Can you explain a bit more about that work that you're doing, like these gamification solutions? What exactly does that mean?
Sure. Is this where you want me to show screen? Do I show screen now?
If that helps, you can go ahead.
Okay. I'll show you a little bit. Okay. Can everyone see?
Not yet. Okay, now can.
Okay. So I'm just going to show it in a very brief PDF version. Okay. So it's like fast for everyone. So for us, we study how people think and perform in games, and we learn about certain motivations and certain behaviors that games tend to drive, and we extract those from games, study them, and apply those mechanics and theories to non-game processes. So for example, can I get you to work harder at work? Can I get you to generate more sales? Can I get you to engage your staff or your people better? So these are some of the things that we do. So in terms of people engagement, we look at onboarding orientation programs, training needs, engagement programs, recruitment. For consumers, we look at product launches, roadshow exhibits. How do I make a roadshow more interesting? How do I make an exhibition more interesting? Feedback even. So I'll share with you some examples of some of the work that we've done. So we've worked with the National Gallery Singapore to design a game experience for their art education program for primary schools. So the challenge is, how do I get students who are very tech savvy to put away their tech for a while, go to a gallery and still appreciate what art is and who are Singaporean artists around Singapore, right? So we've also taken this to the next level and designed an escape room style experience for the management, even the senior management. So we take what's available at the gallery and transform the entire experience into something that's interactive, something that's a little bit more unique that they've not really seen before lah. Another example is we've designed onboarding programs for management consultancy firms. So when new people join a company, how do they look at a company? How do they think about a company? And we can design games around that as well. We've worked with Visa Singapore to design a financial literacy game concept. This is ready to teach secondary school students a little bit more about financial literacy, savings, budgeting, debt awareness, and things like that. Right. The last thing I'll show you all is basically it doesn't always have to translate to games. So we were invited overseas to a company in Macau where we designed a staff culture roadmap using game theory and game mechanics. And we designed an entire kind of cultural roadmap and orientation program for about 25,000 staff members. Yeah. So this is kind of what I do lah. Okay.
That's pretty cool. Did it, just to get a sense, like
Sure.
Okay, now I ask that later.
Yeah.
It's more exciting that way. Anyone, Suen or Sherilyn, do you want to go next?
I can go next. So hi everyone, I'm Suen. When I was going into university, I I went to the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, so that was in NUS. And at that point, I wasn't completely sure what I was going to major in. And so I had a couple of hunches of what I was more interested in and what I was less interested in. But because I could just go in and try different things, I waited, and then later when I realized I wanted to go deeper into English Lit, I just majored in Lit. But at the time when I joined this university, they also offered me the option of doing a second major. And my mom said, "Oh, hit your bets." So I did a second major in business, and it was in the Faculty of Business at NUS. And later I did an international management program. So I did even more business studies, graduated a bit late for my batch. And when I was in business school, they were talking a lot about something called ecosystems. So the idea that more and more value is delivered because of how we are connected with each other and how companies and people can gather resources to themselves. And I was very curious about kind of that macro lens. And I thought, okay, where can I go to get that kind of view? So I went into the public sector, and I went to a statutory board called the Economic Development Board. So they are actually the government body that brings international business to Singapore. But for me personally, I was very passionate about the design sector, and I wanted to see how the human side of this innovation could be developed in Singapore. So how can we get companies to think differently about how they innovate, not just in terms of output or science, but also in terms of how they can make something more enjoyable for humans. Like Apple is a great example of that. So I did that for about 4 years. So I was looking at talking to businesses. Louis, if it helps, I can show a couple of like images. Would that help right now?
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, so when you're in the public sector, you can work on different things. One of the things that I worked on was working with Design Singapore Council on a design master plan. And that was the idea that could we, as Singapore, chart a vision for the next 10 years in terms of where the sector should go and how it should impact Singapore. So I think one of the most powerful things that came out of the conversations that we had with different stakeholders from the design industry as well as from the business world about design for the master plan sessions was actually the idea that, you know, Singapore, we always say like, oh, it's a very livable city. We score very well on rankings, but have we thought about what will make us a more lovable city? And is that something that design can help to do? So even if you've checked out what Design Singapore has done recently, I think a lot of it is geared towards this vision that we helped set up by talking to different stakeholders and working through a paper and a proposal that went up to the minister for approval. So that's one example. Another example is, let's see, can you see this one? Did the screen change?
Yeah.
Okay,
Johnson.
This is an example of working with a company. So at that time, we wanted to create more good design jobs in Singapore. And we wanted to look at some of the best design teams around the world and to invite them to actually make their presence and their regional headquarters in Singapore. So J&J's first design lab outside of its New York base was actually set up in Singapore. So I had to, you know, do the work of talking to them about their plans and introducing them to stakeholders here, like our schools, local design firms that they could partner so that they could get a sense of what our ecosystem was like. So that was what I did at the start. And then at some point I felt like, oh, I really want to do design myself. And so I started to work on projects for EDB. Louis, let me know if this is taking too long. I think I can just show. It might be easier if I just show. So for example, what is the experience like for companies that are hiring a new team in Singapore? So I started to look more at the design of that experience. And recently I actually moved and I joined a team that's looking at the future of classroom experiences. So that's kind of part of my journey. Yeah.
Cool, thanks for that. So I think that was quite interesting because it's like a shift from like kind of like government work. I want to get some clarity, right? Because you mentioned like writing papers and like letting it go up the ministry. What kind of tasks and stuff were you actually doing in that setting? Because I see the project and what it's trying to achieve, but what does the work entail?
Yeah, so there are different kinds of work. And I think actually in general, no job is just one job. Like every job is multiple jobs at the same time. And actually different people are better at different parts of the job. So when I was at EDB, part of the job was working with stakeholders to influence and to persuade them. So that's like me going to a company and saying, hey, can I talk to your chief creative officer? Can I talk to your chief design officer? Here's why he should think about Singapore. So that's the persuasion part of it. And I would be making slide decks. I would once a year maybe make a trip overseas and talk to the stakeholders. And a lot of client management there. So that's one bucket of tasks. Another bucket of tasks was managing, structuring and delivering grants to companies. So I have to design it, I have to check and make sure the legal work is done correctly. And I have to check with the companies on milestones. So that's another bucket of work. And then a third bucket of work, which is a bit more strategic, is around planning and policy. I didn't go very deep into policy, but what I did for, say, design master plan was to help with some of the making the connections to different companies that needed to be talked to as part of that process of developing that plan. So that plan needed to be drafted and it needed to be cleared across different levels. And each time they have comments, you have to kind of find answers. You have to talk to more people to get the answers and things like that.
So it pretty much sounds like there's a lot of like working with people and like trying to talk to them, trying to like communicate clearly about your ideas and stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and different types of people. So the way you talk to companies and the way you talk to another government agency and the way you talk to the schools, the institutes of higher learning here, like the polytechnics, they're all different contexts in which you talk to them.
Okay, cool. I think that was a great introduction. How about Sherilyn, you there? Sherilyn, are you there?
I am. Hi.
Okay, I'm gonna spotlight you. Okay, your camera not on yet.
It is.
Okay, there it is. Hello.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Sherilyn. I now work in an NGO called the Singapore International Foundation. I studied Chinese language and literature in China. It has nothing much to do with what I'm doing now, but let me explain how I got here. So I decided to study Chinese. I studied Chinese, higher Chinese, in school, in secondary school, in JC. I really liked the language. And then I wanted to learn more. I felt like what I learned in JC wasn't enough. So then I thought if I don't do it at uni, I will never have the chance to do it again. I will never have that motivation. I'm not in the right environment for me to pick up those books, to delve into the language and to understand it as much as I like. So I decided to take it as a university major. Naturally, everyone was like, are you going to be a teacher and stuff like that? No. So there was a break between, usually for girls, we have a break between JC and university. There's like a 6-month. And at that time, I went to work kind of as a before and after school care teacher. That convinced me I hated teaching. I have no control over a class. So I know that I won't be a teacher. So I knew that even if I took this degree, I won't join MOE. So then it became a degree that I really took just to, I guess, to delve more into my passion, to learn more about something that I really wanted to learn and wouldn't have the chance to learn later on in my life. So China was an interesting experience. Let's see if I have pictures to share. What would I do? Application. This. Okay. So let's see. I think my now. Can you guys see?
Yeah, but I think should be okay. We only see your window file
folder,
explorer.
like the folder.
We only see the folder.
Maybe then it just makes my stuff. Can you see like 3 pictures?
It's a little bit bigger now, but yes.
I don't know how to show the picture alone, but so this
You
is
can
what
press
my
share screen.
university.
Then when you press share screen, there should be one option that says like share your desktop or your screen or something. Choose that one.
Press share screen, new share this photo. Okay,
Yeah, okay, that works too.
are you seeing this now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay, so this is what my campus looked like. Very, very old, very China. But that was what I was in for, right? Like, if you want to learn Chinese language and literature, go to China and learn the real deal. Don't learn like I don't know. I mean, it's not that you can't learn it in Singapore. NUS and NTU has great Chinese courses, and I was comparing them. But I realized that a lot of my JC classmates that wanted to learn Chinese really wanted to be teachers. And the coursework in NUS and NTU just linked with the NIE coursework a lot easier. I wanted to feel China. So this is part of orientation. Good thing that foreign students don't really have to be in it, but as part of Chinese universities orientation, they have this military style training.
Did you
a
have
bit
to
like
participate in that?
I didn't, thank goodness, but also a bit sad because then I didn't get to bond with my classmates as much. I was the only, okay, so there were two foreign students in my cohort of Chinese lit students. One was me, one was a Japanese girl. We weren't, so at that time, my university had very few foreign students. They didn't really know what to do with us. So we couldn't stay on campus with the rest of the Chinese students. We had to stay in the city, in the foreign students campus, and then we take like a 1 hour, 1.5 hour school bus ride to school every single day, back and forth. Because the Chinese students' dorms were actually quite free, like 6 people to a dorm, no heating and stuff. They don't want foreign students there to like ruin the reputation of the school and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting experience. I made a lot of friends. And because I was also living in the foreign students' dorm, I got to meet a lot of students also. So all these experience kind of helped me get my job later because after university, I decided to. Am I back? So after
Your
university,
video's like not turning on.
I turned it on already. Okay, maybe we have to give it a while.
Yeah, or you
see
can just
myself
verbally
frozen
share
on the
first.
screen. Yes, yeah. So okay, after university, I decided that I don't want to waste my experience in China. In just being a student, I want to actually experience China more. So I started working in China. And the first job I got was in internship and volunteering positions coordinator for international students. And that job I got because I think my boss could clearly see how I could interact with foreign students, young people from anywhere around the world. And that came from my experience living in the foreign students' dorm and interacting with the other foreign students in the school. And also how I could handle myself in a Chinese work environment. So I could, as part of that first job, I had to place like UK, US students in internship positions in Shanghai. So I had to go meet Chinese companies that would like an international intern and help them find a good match for the job. And then I had to arrange for the interns' housing. So I had to deal with Chinese property agents and things like that. So all these came because I think I was fluent in both languages. I had lived in China for a while then, and I could handle myself with different people that I meet. And then after that, my second job in Shanghai was actually with the Singapore Chamber of Commerce, Shanghai Singapore Business Chamber of Commerce, where it's an organization where Singaporean businessmen and businesses that went to China, went to Shanghai, would gather, and it helps to promote their benefits. And it helps to introduce new trade laws and business laws for them. We organize a lot of networking events for these Singapore businesses, businessmen, and also a lot of social gatherings. So naturally, I got that job because I was a Singaporean, young, living in China, could speak the languages, could coordinate all these things.
Sorry, so it's like a Singapore clan association in Shanghai, lah.
Planner, yeah, but for businesses mostly.
Right.
So most people that I work with are businessmen or entrepreneurs Singaporeans working in Shanghai. Yeah,
And it's
so
the
they
Singapore-China Business Chamber of Commerce, was that it?
yes, yeah, the Shanghai branch of it. So that was fun. And obviously I got that job because I was Singaporean. I could engage both sides, both the Singaporean businessmen and also the local partners. I was fluent. I could read contracts, read things like that in both English and Chinese, which helped a lot. I could help them, make bookings. A lot of secretariat role could be done, and because I was fluent and understood how things work. And then after that, I had to come back to China because my parents missed their daughter. Come back from China to Singapore, and then I joined where I am now, the Singapore International Foundation. Which is also fun. And I think a lot of why I got hired and got to where I was today is based on my international experience. So yes, so as part of the job, I first ran a Singapore-China Business Professionals Exchange Program. So that's clearly why I was hired for the job. And then from there, because I started to work with businesses and people in Singapore, they transferred me to the Young Social Entrepreneurs Program. That's also where I met Louis. So as part of the Young Social Entrepreneurs Program, it's, I organize workshops. I find the right speakers to teach them different skills. I bring them on overseas study visits. Again, how you handle yourself outside your comfort zone is a key skill that I think makes me good for the job. So it's really fun, and I've been in SIF for almost 6 years since. Besides the Young Social Entrepreneurs, I've also grown my project scope. I'm also working in the Arts and Culture program where I work with different artists. I've also started working with ASEAN youth leaders on the leadership program. A lot of it is project management skills. As what Swen said, there's a lot of stakeholders management skills, communication skills. As it turns out, it doesn't have much to do with Chinese language and literature anymore. But whenever we want to engage with China, so the program is international. Last year, we brought our participants to Shanghai for the first time in the whole program's duration. And because we had to go to Shanghai, a lot of Chinese communication was involved. The rest of the team did not read or speak Chinese fluently. So I became very useful. I can say the project cannot get done if I wasn't in the team, cannot get done as smoothly because I needed to proofread all our contracts with our partners. I needed to book venues. I needed to make sure the meal orders are in place. So someone has to read Chinese menus. Doesn't take a literature degree to do it, but still could see how everything came together for me. Yeah, so that's my story.
So for visual reference, I've kind of just basically charted it down here. I took some screenshots. If you're not happy with that, let me know, then I'll take it away. But basically the idea here is like Siwei, for example, started a business, then this is the kind of work you do. Sherilyn, whatever you shared about working in China, and then helping students find internships and working on SIF. Suen working at EDB, developing the design industry, doing some master plan and designing some solutions for Singapore's future. And I think in a sense, there's some sense of a variety because in case for the students who are watching, you're not super aware, but these are three pretty different angles. So if you see on the Zoom as well, the way that we labeled it, Siwei is an entrepreneur, so he kind of created his own opportunities, started his own business, kind of private sector and stuff like that, right? Then Sherilyn kind of works with a non-governmental organization, the Singapore International Foundation. And Suen kind of spent some time in the government, working in public sector and stuff like that. So I think it's interesting to see there's this diversity among them as well. And I was curious as to when it comes to choosing your major, right? What were some criteria for how you made your decisions? Because we have some students here, like Patrina, for example, she has made a decision to do what again? Was it politics? You're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm majoring in politics, law, and econs.
Yeah, politics, law, econs. And Clarence, how about yourself? What are some of your thoughts or what you might want to do? You have to
for now, I'm thinking of, I think my career aspirations are actually very similar to that of Sherilyn because I have great interest in Chinese. So actually, I'm thinking of pursuing a Chinese degree in China University in future. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow, perfect.
spot on. Like spot on.
Nice. Yeah, but in any case, I think students like yourselves might be considering these things, and there might be some doubts and questions about will I be able to get a job and that kind of stuff. We've kind of like already mentioned how these people are having like pretty amazing, interesting careers already. With what they are studying, but perhaps like as you are, we kind of address that side. Later on, we'll talk about some tips about how no matter what you are studying, right? How can you like boost your employability? Uh, yeah. So, but I think for now, I think it's nice to sit in this space where we are thinking about, I want to pursue this course, or I'm going to pursue this course. What made me finally make that decision? So, do any of you want to share? Because the only thing I caught just now was Sherilyn did mention that if she doesn't do it now, she's not going to do it ever again. So, that's one reason. Do any of you have anything else that really drove your decision?
In terms of major or choosing major, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll share a little bit. So I was accepted into SMU Social Sciences, SMU Social Sciences, NUS FASS, and this brand new course called Linguistics and Multilingual Studies from NTU. So that was the second batch. Basically, if I were to join, I'll be in the second batch of students ever, lah, right? So I think that's quite similar to Patrina's situation right now. So I thought basically, but that's because I'm more of an explorer type person, right? And I thought, okay, look, I could get to all that, but there are thousands and thousands of degrees of social sciences, social science graduates, political science graduates, and so on. But this course is something really new, something that potentially could be very exciting, and something that between the three, I think I want to take a risk lah, or take an adventure lah. Honestly, the idealistic kind of take an adventure kind of thing kind of hit also lah. So I made a choice to go in. And inside linguistics, because it's a new course, and maybe because you're entering a new course, you might experience the same thing. The professors are learning together with us. So they're learning what courses to build for year 3, year 4, because they probably haven't reached that stage yet. They're learning how the year 1s and 2s react to the course curriculum and the mode of teaching that they teach, because it's new, right? So they don't know exactly how to deal with you. So it's quite a startup. It's almost like a startup. It's like a startup journey together that the experts and the students are learning together. So it's quite interesting, I think. Yeah.
So I think like on retrospect, it almost like makes complete sense why you went to start your own business.
Yeah, no. Always. So in school, even in NTU, right, I was always starting clubs or joining, new things and initiatives and things like that. Like Louis, Conjunct Consulting, right? Yeah, so I was the inaugural AD director of projects for the NTU chapter. So it's just like, oh, it sounds interesting. It sounds like a cool initiative. Then let's try and see what happened lah. And then we did lor. Yeah.
That's cool. So it was really wanting to pursue that sense of like adventure for you, was it?
Yeah, I think partly.
I think that's interesting because for a lot of people, they would see that choice, right? I don't know if the rest of you might feel that way, like a new course and like not proven, not tested. A lot of people might have like quite a lot of skepticism and like, oh, like, is it really gonna work out? Do you have any of those kind of like anxieties?
Me?
Yeah.
I th- I think yes. I think there's a certain element of that. I mean, you always wonder like where this will go, right? And whether you wanted to, whether it's a waste of your time to go in, like, oh, I love the subject, but I'm still jobless, then what's the point? So I think you will go through a phase of that. But the golden rule also, in my opinion, is if you do well or you apply yourself quite well in your uni life, you will definitely find something out there. And in my opinion, I think a lot of jobs out there are a lot more generalist than people think they are. So you don't actually need to be a business major to join a bank. you don't need to be to have like banking and finance or I mean, there are some professional jobs, right? But a lot of the generalist jobs. So, for example, SQ, in my batch alone of executives, I'm a linguistics major. There was a history major. There was a a chemistry major, and a biomed major. So all of us were from drastically different, degrees lah.
Okay, and I think that's kind of like, I've always found that it's a very big chasm for students to understand sometimes, because I feel like in a school setting, we're very used to the idea that, oh, if you want to take physics in A levels, you must have taken physics in secondary school. So if you follow the logic forwards, then if I want to do physics in uni, then I must have done this. But what you're saying is that actually the jobs that are available isn't going to be so narrow in their requirements lah.
Yeah, I think to me once you enter the working world, right, a lot of preconceptions of what you thought would be is really thrown out the window simply by seeing how people behave, how people react. So a lot of times so beyond choosing a job, when you do get in a job, right, you realize that half your job is doing the actual work, the other half is managing the people around you, your bosses, your peers, your clients, your vendors, and so on and so forth. So like there is a whole
More
world
than
of
half.
yeah, right? Like jialat. Oh yeah, exactly. You guys I mean it's like your career, So you will realize that actually learning how to manage people, learning how to critically think about new ideas and analyze kind of process is way more important than the textbooks that you kind of pick up in school, in my personal opinion. Yeah.
How about Suen? Like, how do you make your decision when it comes to the course that you picked? Literature, right? English literature?
Yeah, so I think Siwei went with what was exciting for him. I think for me, like I'm someone who's quite creative, but I'm also quite conservative, and I think you can see in my decision because I tried to do a diversified portfolio. So I tried to say, okay, I will do literature, which I really love and I think I'm really good at. But I will also do business, which actually it was very hard lah. But it will stretch me and it will force me to think in a different context. And actually, the interesting thing is, I guess at that point, there was really no coherence between the two subjects. Like if you study Shakespeare, right, and you study strategy, right, you can try very hard, but they hardly interact. Yeah, it's not like your ideal, like, oh, but I think like you don't worry about that first. You stretch, you learn to work with different people and to use different lenses to try things out. And at some point in life, the coherence will come. And I feel like only now in my life that is like maybe the last 2 years is it starting to come into some coherence where I'm like, oh, okay, this is how language shapes the way we think about business. This is how we build purpose in companies.
Yeah.
These are the narratives that
Yeah.
we share, and somebody needs to call out. So like I think you can go ahead and try things out. Try and do some things you love, do some things you don't love, but that will help you grow. And then worry about the coherence later. Yeah.
Also, I think building on that point, right, Sue, and I think you raised sorry for cutting in, Louis.
No.
Yeah, I think what was great was I took a lit mod. So I'm actually more of a lit person than a linguistics person, but so I took a lit mod, right? And the mod was called I think the students might be interested. The mod is called Sympathy for the Devil. So the whole point was it was an entire module from the English literature department on studying the villains in all famous movies and what their motives and their behavioral patterns were like and why they were villains. Is it justified? So from studying like Judas in the Bible all the way to like Iago and Othello, right? What were their motives? How did they think? So actually there's a lot more thought than just I'm going there to learn books. I'm going there to read more books or learn language. There's a lot of critical analysis that you pick up and it's definitely translatable in the real world.
It also gives you the substance to bring into conversations that flavor the conversations. Because we could just have a conversation about like what's right and what's wrong, but you could bring in like a story or a theory or something that you've had a conversation or dialogue in class about, and that actually completely shifts the conversation
Yeah.
with someone.
It's really the skills that you pick up. I think at the end of the day, for me, I feel that sorry, I talk a lot. So if anyone wants to stop me, just please Anyway.
Yeah, I'll just like shut off your video and mute you or
Yeah,
something.
like music me out, like the Oscars. But I think generally it's really in my experience in uni was that it's a lot of the skills that you pick up. The way you think, the way you talk, the way you start projects with people. Projects become a lot more intensive than PW, guys. Tell you all first. It becomes a lot more intensive. There's a lot more riding on it. You actually have to go out into the real world, do a lot of things. So you start getting a dose of reality and it's really different lah. So it's not really the coursework that you remember or that you learn. It's more how to think critically, I think. Yeah.
And
So I
the
think
worst projects are the best stories.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I should go and write that as a
Quotable quote.
So also right, as a side point, right, if you hear any of your friends say, "Hi guys, I'm doing a survey," just do the survey, okay? Do them a favor and do the survey. Everyone hates surveys, but we should all give back.
It'll come
okay?
around. It'll come around and bite you if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's perfect because we kind of moved from why did you choose the course to how has the course helped you, or how has it kind of helped you out at your work lah. So just so you know, I've been taking notes about what you guys were saying. So there's something about interest, there's an adventure, there's like hedging your bets and stuff like that. But as we kind of move in to talk about like applying the things that you learn, right? I actually did this pre-session research or like homework lah, just to bring in a story, which is maybe just to anchor the next thing that you guys talk about. Here I kind of looked at like psychology as one of the courses that a lot of people might be interested to do. So psychology will become like counselor, is it at the end? Which maybe you'll be therapists, but actually in other fields, there are applications to this knowledge as well. So if any of you watch cartoons or on Netflix, right, you should really go and watch this show called Avatar. It's not the blue skin alien one, is the this cartoon one instead lah. So it's a really good show, and a lot of people have praised it for having really good characters and character development. So if you see here, they talk about how this character displayed narcissistic transference. They had this Alfred Adler's inferiority complex, according to Ken Chapman, never whatever, stuff like that. So all this kind of like is like the psychological backing to like these characters and how they develop. And I think it's really fascinating to me always that all the favorite shows that I have, that I watch, even like anime and stuff like that, right? The way that the characters are written a lot of times is based on pretty strong understanding of human psychology. And that's one of the things that I find myself geeking out a little bit about when I watch shows. Like, wow, the way that this guy wrote about this character is amazing. And then I start to think like, is there other people in my life that is like that? Or oh, does that explain my this friend who keeps like bitching about something or something? So I find that that's really fascinating, and the knowledge in the sense that you might have learned in like this humanities or social science applied into a completely different field seems of great value. And it's kind of similar to what some of you were talking about. Can I just like get help to sharpen and really talk about that angle? Maybe with some stories or some examples of how you brought that into your work.
Maybe I'll try. I think when you study literature, like what you said, it's a bit like studying psychology also. When you analyze characters and you analyze what that character in a piece of literary work is going through and all that, a lot of that applies into how you interact with people in real life also. Helps you to get a bit of understanding of what might be going on in their heads. And that is one of the key skills that you need in dealing with anybody at work, actually, or anybody in your life. So that was really helpful. I think another thing that I gained when studying Chinese literature is I had to study, oh my God, I had to study international literature in Chinese. So like all your Russian lit, all those like 10-syllable names. When once they get translated to Chinese, there's like 10 characters in your name. I cannot write fast enough for the exams. Like by the time you write 2 characters names, it's like 1 minute already. So, but I had to do 2 modules of international literature, all in Chinese. But the way my professors and my peers analyzed it, it's quite different from like I guess the last time I did English lit was in secondary school. So there's a bit of different perspective. Um, they see the conflicts a little bit differently also. So this helped me kind of I want to now call myself someone who really understands Chinese culture well, and with this skill it helps me in negotiating with Chinese partners, or maybe in future if I want to find a job that has to do with China. But I think a lot of it also came from studying literature, from how there are different perspectives from different students and professors in analyzing the same piece of work from the Western world. Same with I had to, because I studied in China, not exactly literature, but I had to sit through compulsory modules on communism, Mao's theories, these kind of fundamental skills that I did not realize was so ingrained into Chinese society, and it's forcibly kind of taught to them. They are tested on it. They get a good score, they regurgitate his whole speech. And that, whether or not they are conscious of it, especially I think for literature students who are very passionate when they use words, it comes out in how my classmates behave and interact. My university is quite a good university. A lot of them became party members afterwards, after graduation. And so now when I look at news, if I have to look at how economic policies affect our social entrepreneurs at work and things like that, whether our program should venture into China or not, I think about how my classmates behaved in class and think like these are the people that are actually, junior political holders in the party now. What kind of association can I make? Why did they behave this way? Why are they so defensive? And all these actually came out already in the classroom and from the way content was taught to us, or from the way things are graded. So that was interesting. I never actually You're right. I think a lot of you pointed that I don't actually remember a lot of what's in my textbook, but I remember the experiences and how things were analyzed, and that kind of stuck even when I'm looking at people and interacting with people now.
I think what's quite fascinating is like, I mean, because you went in for interest, right? And in a sense,
Yeah.
you went in for the content, but what you really took away more was the skills at the end of the day.
I think once something becomes examinable, you kind of return it to the teacher after the exam. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Cool. How about you? I actually know that your work like involves gamification and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, and I
Yeah.
imagine that linguistics is an interesting like angle to look at it from.
Okay, so I think from the linguistic perspective, right? You and this is something that I think applies to all courses, not just linguistics. Once you enter, you will realize that any stereotype that you had of the course or what it's supposed to be is thrown out the window. You realize that it's a lot more diversified, especially the courses that seem very one-dimensional, like English, Chinese, linguistics. You assume that that's all you're gonna study, and then you go in, and then you realize, wow, there are like 10 different variations, branches, subgenres, so on and so forth that you need to actually look at. So for linguistics, you will have stuff like sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, computational linguistics, neurolinguistics, and you can actually, after you've cleared your basic modules, start to choose the modules that you are more interested in or that you want to take, right? So I started to choose a lot more sociolinguistic policies, sociolinguistics modules. So I started to learn a lot more about how people perceive language, how people adopted language, how language changed over time. So those things interested me, and I realized that, wow, I can now not look at computational linguistics for the rest of my life and just focus on people, right? And then that kind of, I suppose, brought the seeds of how do you interact with people? How do you get people engaged on conversation? What what do you say to someone that triggers certain things and all this sort of stuff? And then that builds me to how do I design programs? How do I engage people effectively? How do I interact with people better? And that led to so I joined Singapore Airlines for a couple of years, in the loyalty marketing division. So our job was to, any of your Chris Line members? Yeah, all Chris Line members. It's free, guys. You all should be Chris Line members. Anyway, and beyond, right? So our job was to think about how to engage members, how to design communications, how to design programs that would drive certain levels of behavior lah. And you realize that actually a lot of these things come into play, just maybe not in the language sense, but the same skills, the same ways of thinking comes into play lah. So gamification in itself is really about looking at the mechanisms and the triggers that teach you how to engage people better. So okay, how many of y'all have done a focus group before? Like sat down for a focus group, right? And focus group is just ask question, answer, talk. This okay lah, like this. Sorry, like this.
For context, in case it's not clear, focus groups are when we gather a bunch of people and like ask questions and like
Yeah.
it's kind of like an interview with a lot of
Yeah.
people at one time.
Yeah, correct. But what if I suddenly included certain mechanics like, oh, if this person says this, then this person is allowed to respond or allowed to do this in return. And as they all manage this, we can write all our points down and we can award points to each other and all this sort of stuff. Does that change the way we actually understand each other or interact with each other? So that's the whole point of gamification. And I think I took a lot of that or the understanding of that, the root of that from a lot of things I learned in uni lah, I think.
I'm
Yeah.
reminded of how like they always talk in like Asian culture, there's like this like safe face kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like got points. So I mean, kind of like your focus group. If you say this thing, then I give you points. You say that thing, I minus a point.
We're Singaporean. Everything's a competition. Okay, we're Singaporean. Right, Kiasu Kings.
Suen, how about you?
For me, I think it's part of it is learning different ways of connection with people. Like different lessons, I would work with people from different faculties, right? And you soon find out that, like, as art students, we're like, okay, actually engineers are the best group mates because they will do all the work and they will be like, okay, I'll do it all, and then they'll just do it. I mean, it's a stereotype, but different people who have experienced different contexts have different ways of being and thinking and different things that they like. And if you understand more context, then you can create connection more easily with different people. So like if we've all had the experience of going through PSLE, if I talk to someone about PSLE, it makes us feel closer. And I think these are small things, but they are important things because they are part of understanding what it means to be human. And I think two ways that what I learned in school came into play when I was at work. One was learning how to communicate with precision. It's a really important skill in the public sector because if you can imagine, when a paper goes out to the public, everybody will have a reaction and you need to think through all the potential reactions ahead of time. So someone has to make sure that when you draft the email, right, it's very zun. Because you don't want, you shoot the email and then later the person is like, what do you mean this? Oh no, I did what you said, what? And then you're in trouble, right? It sounds like a small deal, but actually doing literature made me very sensitive to nuance. And it makes you very good at communicating things. Like I know that I can change the energy of an email or a conversation with the type of words I use, the length of the pauses I use, the type of language I use, and the things I name, right? So I can end with, I can sign off and I can say like, yours sincerely, or I can say regards, or I can say RGDS. and each time it carries a different implication. And so a lot of it is also reading between the lines to see like, okay, what are our dynamics in this email ping pong? And what is the right stroke to play in the ping pong? So that's one, that's like just like writing the email. And I think the other thing that's broader is learning that dialogue is the way in which we as humans self-organize. And if I know how to have a good conversation, then I will know how to align people better. And that comes into play when you have to like there's a meeting and different people have different views, right? If you don't know how to like listen or ask questions or to kind of integrate what they say, things don't move the same way. So I think some of these skills for me lah.
Okay, cool. I was taking notes again. So this kind of some of the stuff that I picked up lah. So how literature brings you to understand people by characters, and then by extension understanding people, and have a lot more nuanced way of working with them. Gives you background knowledge that allows you to be more effective when you talk and communicate stuff. Then broadening your horizons, learning to connect with people. Broader horizon was pretty interesting because it's the idea that, I mean, like what Siwei said, right? You would think that there's a certain stereotype, but when you go in, you realize there's so much diversity within that one thing. So like, for example, I did a bit of psychology when I was a student lah, and I was exposed to the fact that psychology had a huge biology component, and how they don't care about what you think, they don't care about the way that you perceive things. They just know that when you eat this thing, this enzyme will produce more, or this hormone, there'll be more of this hormone being produced, and you will feel a certain way. There's that perspective. And then there's the one that's more like counseling, and then there's the one that's like all statistics and numbers and math. So I think that was quite fascinating lah. I just wanted to personally lend some emphasis on this project work thing. For those of you who go through JC and do PW, you will just hate it. But I can promise you that if there's anything you learn in JC that actually helps you at work, it's PW. Because that is actually what the working world is like. That guy who doesn't do any work, you're gonna see a lot of them. That person who like just can't stop talking, you're gonna see a lot of them. That person who doesn't say anything, you're gonna see a lot of them. And how you still do your work effectively despite that is essentially how you be effective at work.
I think also it's how you manage these people. It's not just being aware of them, but it's learning how you manage them, because they're going to be a part of your life at work for a while. Yeah. Exactly.
And I mean, to also then have that awareness of like, hey, then who are you in that group? Are you the slacker? Are you the guy who presents? Which is also a whole interesting self-discovery process. I just want to move us into the last part before we just go into questions full scale, right? Which is really tips on like, let's say you study this humanities thing and like you don't want to be a teacher, or let's say you do want to be a teacher, whatever lah. But how do you like kind of boost your employability and like your ability to find a job and all that lah? So I've already taken notes based on like what you guys were saying just now. So stakeholder management, learning how to deal with people. Like exactly like what Siwei say, like there's this guy who doesn't do work. How do you work with him so that he's more productive or more effective? Things like that. There's like project management, which came up a few times. So I mean, my personal advice in project management is you develop project management skills by doing more projects. So do find opportunities to do more projects, and don't just talk about school projects. Because if you're talking about employability, right? If you do the same amount of projects as everyone else in school, you develop like the same amount of skills. But if you take on more projects, if you start an initiative, if you join a bunch of friends to go and help the needy and stuff like that, these are all extra projects which will give you more skill sets. I think one interesting thing that I believe it was Siwei who mentioned it, that your degree doesn't really define you. And I'm sure the rest of you will agree also lah. Just because you did literature doesn't mean you are writing poetry every day. It means that for some of you, maybe you write poetic reports or something, but you do a bunch of different things as well. Something about generalist skills. And I think there's something which Siwei mentioned about uncertainty, because he wasn't super clear what he was getting into, but it was what I heard was building the confidence to deal with it even in the uncertainty. But what do you think are other tips that I should put up here so that people who watch in future also can take good reference from this?
Okay, so to Clarence and Petrina, do you guys play games?
Sorry, wait, can you repeat your question?
Do you play games? Are you do you play like mobile games, video games, and things like that?
No.
Oh, you don't. I'm
Very
sure.
rarely for me as well.
Yeah, right. Closet, don't bluff. Okay, so let me put it this way, yeah. Imagine you are creating a video game character, okay, or you're creating a character in a game, right? And uh, you wanna you're creating this character with the knowledge that eventually, after I create this character, I'm gonna put this character up into a character marketplace for all other players to choose my character, right? So imagine that way lah, okay? So you're creating this character right now, and after I'm done creating this character, right, I'm gonna put this character on a marketplace, and anyone playing this game gets to choose my character. Now I need to make my character a really attractive character, right? Because the more people pick my character, the better my ratings go, right? Let's put it that way. So think about your character right now, your real life character. What skills do you want? If I put your character on a marketplace, right? What do you think people are looking for? So you have to start thinking about how to bolster your skills. It doesn't mean that, oh, I'm a proud social studies student, or I'm a proud social science student, and that's all I need to succeed in the world. That's just nonsense. The world doesn't see it that way. So you have to have a dose of realism as well. So I tend to use the term being a pragmatic idealist. You can be an idealist, but you also have to be pragmatic, because if you're not, then you're really living your own world, and that's something that you don't want to do. So I think you have to think about what skills you need to build up. What every CCA that you join, right, or everything that you do adds up to a larger skill set. So for example, I'll give you an example. I was co-chairman of the D&D committee in Hall, which seems
D&D
absolutely
meaning Dungeons
didn't.
and Dragons,
I
dinner and
wish, bro.
dance.
I wish. Yes, dinner and dance. Dinner and dance. Okay. So it seems absolutely irrelevant, right, to a prospective employer. Except, um, I also tell them that because I was a co-chairman, I handle all business negotiations with vendors. I managed operations. I negotiated and settled for venues, payment, and all this sort of stuff. Then you realize that, this linguistic student also has a bit of kind of live business background, or being able to deal with all these sort of things, right? And then you realize, he has a lot of side skill sets that I can tap on as well. And I think that actually makes you a lot more valuable, because you're able to talk about these things in a very real world context, and explain. Of course, they don't expect you to be super experienced. You're not, right? You're gonna be very real with the fact that you're not. But the fact that you can, and the fact that you've seen, and the fact that you say, I've learned a little bit, but I'm so happy to learn more. I'm much more prepared to learn more. Shows that, you're at the beginning of your journey, lah. Nobody expects you to be a genius, ma, right? But yeah, so I think in my opinion, it's about figuring out all these skills and thinking about what truly makes you a valuable person.
An essential person, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Just joking.
I know exactly what you mean, bro.
How about like Sherilyn? Any thoughts on like tips to be employable?
I think I've generally gone for quite generalist jobs that I guess, yeah. So your degree doesn't define you. What you're editing now really is that. But what my employers have said that they liked was I I guess from how I described myself, or how I told them why I wanted the job, they always saw that I was genuine, I was sincere, and that I truly wanted to learn. So I guess really have the attitude that you want to learn from the job, be humble, be actively learning. So I always like to ask, what kind of skills do you think I will need to help me be the best at this job that I'm applying for? So do I need to know more about the market? When I first ran the Young Social Entrepreneurs program, I knew nothing about entrepreneurship, never even heard of the term social entrepreneurship. But I guess you learn along the way, show that you're willing to learn. That's one thing that you can't listen. Always be, now that you are in it, then always be keen to update yourselves on what's happening. show that you can take initiative. And what I did was I started volunteering for organizations outside of work, like with startups also, to gain skill sets from there, to learn more about the industry from there. So even when you're working, have a CCA that can help you with your work also, or have a CCA that can help you grow into your next job. So being a volunteer, I think, is a great start, because people are very willing to teach volunteers because you're doing it for free for them. So the only thing they can give back to you is the coaching. So yeah, and put yourself out there, make yourself interesting. Have so you don't have to be. I am not a very like the life of the party or anything, but I guess when you have a conversation with me, when I genuinely listen and I share my own experiences, it makes me likable, maybe memorable, and people connect with me quite easily. And that level of connection, that level of likability actually helps more than you think in getting a job, because people want to work with people they're comfortable around. So that's another thing. Yeah.
I just like phrased it in this way, right? Be genuine and figure out who you are. Because if you don't let your degree define you, then to me it's like, then what defines you? And then you gotta find that answer for yourself, like if it's not your degree. And I assume it's gonna be a very personal thing.
A million other people have done your degree, right? I mean, we are not in business or whatever, so maybe less people, but then maybe two batches only for this course, so maybe fewer people. But then there's like so many other people that have the same piece of paper that you have. So something else has to be what you did with the degree and how that degree shaped you, and the experiences you can share are what people will remember.
So, and anything from you too?
I think on the practical side of things, not all of us will know perfectly who we are, and we are all figuring it out. But know how to tell a story. So you don't have to say, this is who I am, and have that all articulated. You just have to be able to tell certain stories, and those stories will help people understand who you are. So know how to tell a story when you go into an interview. Here's something that I did and I realized this about myself. That's actually enough. And if you can't find these stories, I suggest you go to a couple of friends who know you well and ask them to recount what are some key moments that in which they've seen you behave that they think are really unique to you or really outstanding. And try it. You can even refer to your friends and say, okay, most of my friends say this about me. So if you have difficulty articulating it for yourself, get some help and use whatever you have. You don't have to have that perfect narrative. None of us perfectly understand everything about ourselves, and we don't all go into meetings knowing like exactly what we want to say. I think some people are like that, but unfortunately I'm not. But I think when you have a story, people tend to be curious about you. And then the second thing is know how to ask a question, and know what kinds of questions will go deeper than maybe what other people might ask. And if they know that you're asking deeper questions, they feel like, okay, this is someone who actually is interested in what I'm doing, or it's someone who actually is willing to learn, like Sherilyn was saying.
Can I also add in a quick point? I know I again I talk a lot, but I think one thing that a lot of young graduates make. I think Clarence, you're in JC, so maybe whether this applies or doesn't apply to you, I'm not very sure. But or maybe when you apply for internships, right? And interviews, is make your interview process a very, very painful job. Don't mass send things. If you're applying for a company, take the time to understand the company, take the time to understand the industry, take the time to understand what you're about to say about yourself that fits the role that you are applying for, and not just go in there and wing it. I think a lot of people tend to go in with the, oh, I know, I learned 5 things about me. Great. But what does that tell the employer or the potential employer about who you are and what do you want? How are you going to deliver value to them? So make sure that you don't try your luck with 30 companies and see who bites. I don't think, I never ever thought that was a that was a good way of looking at things. So you have to make it painful for yourself, do the research, read a little bit more, and if anything, they'll just appreciate the fact that you took the time to read their mission and values. I always do that. At least read their mission, values, and their culture. At least read that, right? If you don't know anything else about the company. So make sure that they understand that you genuinely are looking to create something with them together. I think that's very important.
And I second that as a career tip too, because when you do this research and understand the organization, don't expect the interviewer to ask you, hey, can you tell me, do you know what our company values are?
Yeah.
They're not gonna ask that.
Yeah, they're not.
So you have to be able to bring it up yourself. You say,
Yep.
like, I was looking at companies and I really felt like what really differentiated your organization was the values, which really align quite strongly with mine. And I can see that in the work that you've been doing, blah, blah, blah. So those kind of things will make you a lot more attractive when you go for these interviews.
Do you want a cheat code? I don't know if Suen does this. Okay, linguistically, right? Because I tend to have like a little, so I tend to try to sneak in their tagline into either my application letter or my interview. So for example, with SQ, right, I'll just talk to them casually. Then somewhere along the line, I'll just be like, yeah, and I genuinely believe that SQ is a great way to fly. Then then click something in their minds. But you know what I mean? But it also means that you've actually spent time listening to them. You know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, I genuinely believe that Nike, just do it, and I believe in that. But when you kind of tie your interview to their mottos and to their things, then there's this personal connection. I always feel that but don't make it corny you know what I mean?
Yeah. Nike one hour power. Imagine you really apply to Nike and then they ask you some question and then you visibly pause and then you okay, I'm gonna do it.
Or you apply for Adidas, right? You apply for Adidas, you tell them, hey, I'm very stupid, but you still call me for interview. See, nothing is impossible. No, don't. That should die.
No, that's not gonna work.
Don't do that. But you understand what I mean, right?
As a career coach, I also like to share that actually a lot of times networking is very powerful. So essentially get to know people.
Yeah.
I can tell you for myself, and I think a lot of others, I know for myself, I've never really had to apply for a job. The jobs have always been referred, someone tell me there's an opening, and usually sending an application for me, it's a formality. So I highly encourage you to get to know more people. Don't just always go to class with the same few people. Try to go to class with more different people.
Agreed.
And go to events. If your school organizes events, do as many internships. It's kind of like what Sherilyn was saying about volunteering. It's the easiest way to get the maximum number of exposure to all the things you ever wanted to do without the company screening you the same way it would a full candidate.
Yep,
yeah, I always think I should have done more internships. And people who mentored in my internships became good referrals for me. If I needed someone to vouch for me in the future.
Yeah. Never, ever burn bridges. You may be mistreated by someone, or you feel that someone is really unfair to you, or is very mean to you, right? Try to exit in the most professional and calm way possible, because you never know when these things come around. I think that's one thing I learned in Singapore. Singapore is so small that everyone after a while knows everyone, right? And you say, hey, yeah, I know this person my cousin, or was ex-colleagues with this person. So it's always important to maintain this it's not even a network. It's just maintain a good image of yourself as far as possible. And you can see in social media today, I know you I think Patrina and Clarence are way more savvy than the four of us old people now, right? I think. But you can see how one single angry mistake can be fatal. One single outburst can be very detrimental to who you are as a student and who you will be as a professional. So you got to be really careful about that and how you put yourself out.
But at the same time, I think I want to balance that out, right? Because there's I think it's the same thing your teachers will tell you about, like digital wellness and cyber wellness. Like be like don't put things that you regret. I completely agree with that. But there's also this thing about be genuine also.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
don't
agreed.
like manicure until like you look like some don't know whether you're real or not real kind of person.
Yeah. Don't bitch about your bosses. Holy crap. You know how many people kena because of that? Right. Come on. Like, oh my god, I had such a rough day. My boss big. Oh, sorry. Then dun. Again, you never
Your
know.
boss is friends with your next boss, right?
That's it. Yeah, correct. So be
Beyond that,
very, very
also
aware.
just be aware that you also then become known as someone who bitches about their bosses,
Exactly.
and your next boss won't be too keen on that.
Mm.
I think I want to add on to this networking thing. I am like, until I had to work, I don't actually network. I'm by nature very, very introverted. Putting myself out there, talking to strangers, it's actually quite scary unless I need to be professional and represent my job and go do it. But I think this thing about networking and getting to know people, it doesn't have to be very intimidating. You don't have to approach a stranger at a huge event. I think it could really be starting from the people that you already know, classmates, take a genuine interest in them. You don't know what their next career progress might be. You don't know what they're doing on the side. If they're doing something interesting on the side that you are also interested in getting involved in, then talk to them about it. They can bring you in or introduce you. So it doesn't need to be a lot of the traditional sense of networking where you imagine a room full of people in suits and then you just have to like bring a cocktail and then go over to them. And that is very intimidating for me. I usually start with people I know and then hope that I get connected to someone else. Or to really look at the people around me or the people that I've met along the way and then think about, hey, actually this person is doing something really interesting. Maybe I can get reconnected again.
Yep.
Yeah. So in that sense, networking for me is then more that person also knows me from the past. I have a bit of things in common to chat with them on already. So from time to time, sometimes I look through my Facebook again and go like, hey, this person is actually in this company now. Maybe I'm interested in speaking to someone from that company. And then I reconnect that way rather than go to a networking event where a stranger from that company is there. I am less good at approaching a stranger to start a conversation. But current contacts and friends I already have are actually valuable assets also. And a lot of times we forget that. We always think that we need to go for huge conferences to meet people. Yeah.
So the way I do
So a
it, I'm
friend
also introvert. I will just organize board game sessions.
Yeah.
And then I ask my friends to bring their friends, and that's it.
So I actually hate networking sessions. You know why? I'll have a good conversation. I meet Louis in a networking session. I'll talk to you, right? And then suddenly, right, someone will come in and they go like, hi, sorry, am I interrupting? I cannot say yes, right? I have to say, oh no, please join. Like, yeah, stop it. I'm trying to talk. So I like making meaning. So I always prefer quality over quantity. Like it's meaningful connections with people. And I can spend like you should spend time building these relationships and talking about your dreams and ideas. Because you never know when someone say, hey, actually I have a job, or I know somewhere that is interested in someone like you, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, or if you're applying for a job, really try and talk to at least one or a few people who are in that company, because that's really important context. Sometimes you will talk to them and you realize that actually maybe you don't want to join that company, or maybe it's not the right timing. So that's where the connections are so important also.
Yeah, so at this point in time, I want us to like divert us to start taking questions because we have not done that and it's very bad of us. So at least like maybe let's start from like Clarice and Petrina, right? Do you have any questions for like the folks here?
Okay, I can go first. So like I like to thank all the panelists for sharing. It was very
good. She'll get hired on this one.
So okay, so like one thing that I've one question that stood with me throughout like the whole like conversation was like y'all talked about like all the soft skills y'all got like from your degree, from your life in university, and like I noticed like how do I phrase this? Like it wasn't really hard skills that you learned from the degree itself, but more like things you picked up along the way. So like to me like these things like they may like not everyone might pick them up, and like perhaps like some people do and some people don't. So like it's kind of like chance is by chance, and like what if some people don't, then like and they miss out on these like opportunities to learn and everything, then like how would you advise like such people to like maximize the things they can learn? Because like clearly like as like what you guys have said, like your degree doesn't define you, and like sometimes a lot of things from the degree itself can be transferred to the working world. Am I clear? Is like my question clear?
I think it's a great question. And actually, I feel like it's not like you have the uni period to learn the soft skills. Then after that, that's it. You take off. You are gonna have like all your life is learning soft skills. And then some people learn fast at the beginning, and then like they take off. And then some people it takes longer. But actually, it's okay. It's actually also learning to be comfortable with yourself and where you're at, and who you are. And if anything, it's just learning to be less scared all the time. At least for me, it feels that way lah. There's a lot of learning to be less scared. Because a lot of times when I'm not learning, it's because I'm too fearful. Yeah, I think for different people, there are different blockers. For me, it's fear. So I think sometimes also the other thing I would say is you don't realize how much you're learning when things feel horrible until you're thrown back into a situation again and you realize how much you learn. So the learning is not quantified by cognitively how much you realize you've learned. A lot of it is experiential. When you are thrown in that situation, today you act this way. If you really reflect on it, the next time you're thrown into that situation, maybe you can change it up a bit. I mean, that's like the game. It's like playing a game.
Hindsight is the best teacher.
Yeah, but I would say, right, the people that you spend time with really shape your ability to pick these things up.
Yeah.
So if you see certain people who do certain things well, don't be scared to go up to them, ask them about it, spend time with them, work for them, so that you can pick up those skills. And different people will want to model after different people. Like, I may love this prof, the other person may love that prof, right? If that feels more like your style, just go with it and learn how they do it. And a lot of it is modeling after different bosses, different people around you, different friends. Trying out how they talk about things. And then, okay, like when I started work, right, I had this boss who was like super good with people. At the end of every meeting, they feel like he's their best friend. And I was so intimidated because I was like quite shy. And like when I go into the meeting, it's like, well, it's like, how am I ever going to like get there, right? And then like suddenly one day in one meeting, when he wasn't around, I realized I was doing some of those things. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that I caught it. So you don't realize what you're catching, but you can control the amount of exposure you get to that thing. And if you want to catch it, then expose yourself more. And if you don't want to catch it, please don't expose yourself so much, Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think you have to understand what you were saying that, like part of what three of us were talking about was, or four of us were talking about was like the transferable, like what skills you learn, and your degree doesn't define you. And I agree with that. But you also have to know what skills from your degree are applicable in the real world. You can't just go in and say, I have a degree in job, and then like, hey, take me as I am. You have to find out within job, what have you learned? What have you picked up? What skills have you picked up that make you actually very valuable outside? And what should I learn, or what do I need to do and know that I don't get from my degree? I think that's something that maybe if you're looking at like complementary skill sets, right? Or my degree doesn't allow me to understand business or something like that. So is there a CCA out there? Is there an internship out there that can help me fill in that gap and fill in this gap? And when we talk about character, like building your own in-game character, right? You fill in all these gaps. Your core is like your degree, and the skill sets built in your degree are that. But then what are these little gaps that you feel, hey, actually this gives me this value, so I become this person. This gives me this value, I can become this person. And this gives me, and then you realize, hey, actually I can become a lot of people within like one central character.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy.
Yeah, like we're not one person. Yeah.
The other thing was also like some of the tips that were shared earlier on actually addresses that question about like how do you then pick up these soft skills. Just do these things lah. You will pick them up one. Then
not wrong.
Do hard things.
Yeah. Then I think one thing that we didn't mention just now was find a mentor if you can. you'll be lucky if you can find one, but just keep in touch with Praxium and all that, right? Because we have a mentorship program and we had our first session today. We had a bunch of students going through it. It's like for 5 weeks, and we'll probably have future batches and stuff. So if you want, you can look out for that. But find a mentor, and that's very helpful. For me, I don't know, lucky or not, because I have siblings which are like 14 years older than me, for example. So they're very suitable to be mentors. And the reason for that is because if I am, let's say a guy and I just graduated, I'm 25. Someone who's 14 years older than me is 39. Someone who's 39 can make decisions about who they want to hire and don't want to hire. So if you want to find a job and your mentor is like has known you for a number of years, he knows you're not just some nonsense person that's desperate for a job. He knows that you've been working hard for years. That person is likely to have a lot more trust with you. And that's one way you can get jobs quite easily to continuously prove yourself to this mentor and keep checking in with them. So it's legit helpful. Like I wasn't really looking for a job, but I was trying to arrange a company visit to Google. And I was like calling my contacts. I call my friends who's working in Google, that kind of stuff. And everybody say cannot. I spent days trying to get that visit to Google and I can't. So I called my brother and said, hey, do you know anyone at Google? Then I just said I wanted to organize a visit. 5 minutes later, he says, contact this guy. You can go and visit on this day.
Whoa.
So the value of like network or finding a mentor is tremendous. And that's another helpful tip. And the mentor will also help you sharpen your soft skills a lot more. Because it's a little bit like tennis. There's this thing in tennis where you get better by playing with better people. Play lousy people, you never get better. So when you have a mentor, right, who has more experience and has a strong, well-developed soft skills, right, they're able to give you feedback a lot more effectively. Yeah. Clarence, do you have a question too?
Hi everyone. So I think because earlier on Sherilyn mentioned that she actually had a great interest in Chinese and Lit. So I think my following question would mostly be directed towards Sherilyn. What I wanted to ask was that because as Siwei mentioned earlier on, to be a pragmatic idealist, right? So so my preconceived notions of what I'll be doing in the future is that, like, because when many people see Chinese, right, like the pursuit for Chinese, a lot of people are seeing it as very one-dimensional. So people will be like thinking, oh, are you going to be writing books in the future, or will you be teaching kids or applying for a job in MOE? So I would actually like to ask, what extent is it actually, can you put the concept of be a pragmatic idealist in this situation?
Did I just sabo Sheridan? Sorry.
Sorry, is this question very hard to
I think I
answer?
totally do. No, it's a good
Because
question. Sorry.
I also took a very long time to figure out how to phrase my question in.
Yeah. Well, what do you think you would be doing? Like, why do you want to? I assume you want to study because you're really interested in Chinese language and literature, right? But for now, what do you think you'll be doing after that? Are you interested
What
in
do you want to
teaching?
do, lah?
Yeah.
I don't really have a certain occupation that I'm fixing onto, but I think mostly will be related to writing. So just now earlier on when you mentioned how you actually jump from taking a degree of Chinese and Lit in uni to be taking on a position at the NGO. So that drastic change really that really appealed to
Why,
me,
right?
and I think that was something that I didn't really consider earlier on.
I think for me, right, this teaching, writing, actually, throughout uni, I was trying to sharpen my interpretation skills so that to me is my fallback. If anything, I pull out a Chinese cert from a Chinese uni. I am completely bilingual. I will be able to find a job even as a translator, interpreter, Chinese tuition teacher. Like I can feed myself. But I realized eventually that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be more involved in the changing society. And I think the good thing about learning Chinese now is that China is such a big market that people are looking into. So if you do pursue Chinese, you at least show that you are capable of using the language, understanding the nuances behind contracts. When Chinese people converse with you, you can read between the lines. Even as a literature student, I think just now Sven mentioned that reading between the lines is important. All these actually now puts you in a very good position for applying for jobs that have to now. So the thing about learning at this stage is I don't think you're only learning the language and literature. A lot of it will be learning the pulse of the country, how your peers, Chinese society, your classmates, how they behave as consumers. Things like that are things that again you don't realize you're picking up because they're not in your textbook, but they will help you become more marketable with your degree. So it's more than your degree, it's your degree plus your experience of being exposed so much to Chinese society and the Chinese mindset, which will help you be more than a writer. And then, of course, if you want to go into writing, then um, understanding more about the cultural context, understanding more about Chinese modern society will help you write more flavorful essays and pieces also. So there is, I actually never thought that Chinese is very restrictive beyond not teaching. And I saw teaching as like a very comfortable, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll be a teacher, which is like a great job, very respectable, except that I lose my voice constantly shouting at people. But the worst is not the worst. And I really quite like interpreting. So if anything, I can always take up a professional interpretation license quite easily. So there are ways to feed yourself, but there are more marketable skills now with this current economic climate. So Chinese is definitely not just going to be about writing anymore.
Can I also just very quickly add in, right? Because I think this is something that he mentioned that I think we forgot to address. Don't be disheartened by the stereotypes that people might put upon you if you decide on a chosen course of study. So if you decide to pursue Chinese language, don't 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 be disheartened or don't be upset when people go, oh, there you just become teacher. It's okay. It's their prerogative to ask these sort of things and their prerogative to say these sort of things. I think all three of us have had like stuff like that thrown at us all the time. If you don't be a teacher, what else can you do? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but the more you learn about your options available in the real world, I think it gives you a lot more hidden, like secret knowledge about what your true potential is. Yeah, as you go along, lah. So don't lose faith in what you decide to pursue.
Wanted to
Okay,
add
thank
some
you.
experience from working with different people and professionals also. I think one thing that is often overlooked when you do something more humanities or liberal arts and social science is that the stereotype tends to be that you don't pick up any technical skills and you learn a lot about a certain lens or a certain perspective or field of knowledge. There's a lot of soft skills. But I would argue to say, right, that you actually have a huge opportunity because of that. Because if you do decide to pick up any hard skills, you're going to have best of both worlds. You are going to have like a really strong soft skills foundation, but you're also going to be capable of like the technical ability and all that. And by and large, at least for the next 5 to 10 years until Praxium becomes super successful, most students who pursue a more humanities and soft skills approach will not take the effort to go pick up hard skills. Most majority lah. So if you do, it's a huge opportunity to differentiate yourself and to create this niche for yourself lah. That yes, God, I have literally seen this. This guy's a history major or a philosophy major, but in his free time he develops apps for fun. And that embodies active learning more than anything else. Because why do you even do that? You don't even have to do that, but you went to do it anyway. That helps differentiate yourself a lot lah. Of course, go and learn if you're interested lah. If you really have no interest, then very hard to force you also. But be open to learning lah.
I think for me, hard skills are a lot easier to pick up later. As like you go for a course on UX design, you can pick it up, or it's easier to pick up than soft skills like communication skills and interpersonal skills, things like that as humanities students we hone over the years, or that the lenses that we apply and things like that. It takes years of practice to really understand and appreciate it. But if you pick up hard skills on the side, and I think it's more structured, there are a lot more avenues to pick up those, then it's easier to pick up hard skills later than trying to hone your soft skills later.
More often than not, you can hone your soft skills by yourself. But it's hard to hone your people skills by yourself. Yeah, talking to mirror or something. Yeah, so there's some advantage and huge opportunity that you guys have in pursuing this path. The other thing is, I think, Clarence, when you talked about pursuing Chinese, right, as a language also, you may not have a very clear idea of what work you want to do. And that's also possible, that you don't have a specific work function that you are keen to pursue. Because I think we all are driven in life by different things. So I want to share this story of another person. She's one of the earliest members of the Praxium team, and Sherilyn knows her. So she was one of the earlier members of like the team on Praxium, and she studied business, but she was really interested in Japanese. And she took Japanese classes ever since she was a secondary school student. Every single week, she paid out of her own pocket to go and learn. And there was some passion and interest there. The business thing is the pragmatic side of her that made her make that decision. So what happened at the end, right, was she went to work in Japan. And she found that her love and her fulfillment came really from that culture, that environment, and wanting to live there and work there and all that. So whenever I go to Japan, I'll visit her. And the last time I went, as a business student who learned Japanese on the side on weekly classes, she's working in an engineering company doing data analytics and programming right now. So where you end up, right, can be very, very different. And a lot of doors don't really close. It's about how you force the door open. Like people close the door, you kick it down and you say, I am suitable and I can do the job. Then you make your own path. And I think that's a lot very relevant for parents, I hope.
Yeah, I hope what I said helped too. I'm very encouraged whenever I see younger people wanting to learn Chinese because it's really not common.
Yeah, I think that answered my question really well. Thank you.
I think why I joined an NGO is always because I knew as a humanities student, maybe like not as profit driven. And then slowly along the way, I realized that my communication skills and my ability to connect with different people from different cultures, different background was what drew me to my employers. And that's something that maybe my degree helped, maybe reading characters helped. But that made me that got me my jobs eventually. And things like project management, I think it's a lot of things that you picked up in school also. So a lot of the skills are not hard skills. It's how well you do your job after. So the degree didn't have much to do with it. So yeah, don't be restricted or don't say a Chinese degree. Like if anything, a fallback is good. your fallback is not bad. Like Chinese tutors make a lot of money.
Especially for expat Angmo families
I know,
who
right?
want their kids to
Go
pick
be a
up
Chinese
Chinese.
tutor for
Yeah.
Angmo family, correct?
I am Beijing trained. Whoa.
Exactly, right? Like I can speak with
It's
the
Beijing trained,
Yeah.
based in Singapore, got international experience, win
Power.
anyway.
Yeah, and actually, really, our strength is that we can teach languages well because we can explain in both languages. So it helps the learners also.
Mm.
I didn't realize that until I started. Like in uni, I was trying to make money to pay for school and what, right? I was teaching Chinese people English, and I was teaching English people, foreigners,
Perfect.
Westerners, Chinese. And I realized it was a perfect bridge. I could explain the cultural notions behind it. I could explain why the word came about in their own language so that they appreciate the beauty of the language also. And that made me a much stronger communicator and improve my interpersonal skills so much that my future employer liked that about me.
Okay, we do have like about 5 more minutes, so I think you can take one more question. Is there any question, Clarence and Patrina?
I have one more question. Okay, so just now, you Louis, you talked about like finding or having a mentor. Like, actually, like I've never heard of this like concept before. Like, how do you like go about like finding a mentor besides like the one you talked about, like the Praxium one?
Join the program. Just join the program that we run. But no, besides that, seriously, the tips for you to get a mentor, right? It's not easy. Honestly, if you're a young person and you want to find a mentor, it's honestly quite difficult. Which is why we designed a program to begin with, because we know how hard it is. But if you really want to do it by yourself, right? Here's some tips. The first thing that's important is you need to have something you want to achieve first. Without that, right, it's very hard to find a mentor, because a mentor won't be bothered with you if you are just a lost person without anything you want to achieve. He's just gonna be like, well, there's 1,000 other lost kids. Like, why don't I just talk to them instead? Like, so why should I mentor you? And generally, what you find people who want a mentor, right? Generally, they want to make an impact. They want to make some difference. So they will be keen to mentor you if you want to make some difference. You want to make the difference that they don't have the time or energy to go and do. So if you have that motivation, right, that's the really good first step to starting to have a mentor. That really very helpful. So but it's tough, because that's why I say, like, when you are younger and all that, it's tougher to get a mentor because you don't really know what you are aiming for after all. So that's one challenge. But if you find that mission, it's gonna be a lot easier to find. So once you have that mission, right, then you need to start looking out for who can I find as adults, as like accomplished people who would be keen to support this mission that I have. And then you ask them out, but you ask them for like have a coffee, or you just ask like, hey, I really admire the work that you are doing. Is it okay if we have coffee, and like I want to pick your brain about this thing that I'm working on? I think 10 to 20% of the time it might work. 80-90% of the time it will not work. Then you can persist. So the next time this person is going to be at some conference, talk at some seminar or something, go for it. And then like say, hey, I've been like following your work for a while. I sent you an email sometime back actually. But you didn't get back to me, but I know because you're busy. I just wanted to like ask you about this kind of this thing, and then ask us a bit. Then he said, will you be open to like meeting me on some other time to talk more about this or something? Or can I like email you or like message you about this question that I have? Then you slowly inch your way in. So I always compare mentorship to relationships. So like when you date, right, you don't go up to the person and straight away say, hey, want to state mine, that kind of thing. So you don't do that unless your boss.
I don't think young people use state anymore.
Fine. So but you would have to build up slowly lah. You would find opportunity to get to see them, get them to like have some inkling that they see you before. Then after that, slowly build that up lah. Until like you meet them for like 4 or 5 times already, then you are quite certain that this person's comfortable talking to you. Then you can pop the question and say like, hey, would you mind if I like treat you like a mentor or something? By the time, you should only ask when you are sure that they will say yes lah. It's like, don't go and propose to the girl when you don't know that whether she's going to say yes or no. It's like just disaster waiting to happen.
I think what Louis mentioned on 2 counts makes a lot of sense in that. I think the first count is don't expect a mentor to give you direction. That's a therapist, not a mentor. A mentor is when you have a goal and you're approaching someone who can help you get to that goal or can help you understand that goal a lot better. It makes things so much clearer. Let's say I know I want to be an entrepreneur. Already I know who, I have a short list of who I want to approach, not just my uncle, auntie. That's number one. I think the second part is don't go in with the idea that this person will be your mentor. Being a mentor is not just about having good business advice, or even just being a nice guy. He or she must be able to have a good feeling with you and to be able to guide you properly lah. So I think a lot of times like, oh, you ask me as an entrepreneur, then I say, okay, see as an entrepreneur, I want him as a mentor. Then you kind of look for me, right? Then you realize how I do things and why I do things is drastically different from you, please don't pick me as a mentor because I cannot guide you the way you need to be guided. And if you follow my way, you'll be all over the place because it's not your style. So I think the whole casually dating idea is a really good way of looking at it. In that you need to go on a few dates with this person. Okay, don't go and date mentors. Okay, but don't show kena rotan one. As in, go on a few sessions to pick their brains. Always say, hey, I'm very interested in this. Can I pick your brains? A few times over different things and find out, is this person the right person to talk to me? Is this person super abrasive? I cannot get along. Then also cannot. So there are a lot of things that must fall into place, in my opinion. And nobody's trained.
But unlike relationships, it's okay to have a few mentors.
Yeah. Yes, that too. Definitely.
Adam Grant has this book called Givers and Takers, where he talks about people who are natural connectors, and people who, kind of like what Louis was talking about, are naturally motivated to help people and to connect people. I think some of them are in this group lah. But I think I would say that if you don't have the networks yet, to find a mentor, to approach the mentor, to make use of people who are givers. So like find the Lewises or the Sherilyn's of the world and tell them what it is that you want to find out about. And if you don't have your mission yet, right, it could just be a question. Like, I'm going to SMU and I'm very passionate about dance. I want to talk to someone who was in dance in SMU. That's a really simple way. And then you can go to either a giver that you know, it could be like an aunt or a cousin, or it could be like a senior, or it could be writing into your school to say like, are there alumni from my school? Because that's a natural connection that you already have. And then you ask the simple question, and then you don't start by asking for too much. You start by asking for like 15-minute call, you know, and you just say like, hey, I'm really curious about dance. What was it like? And if they are friendly, you say, hey, maybe can I ask you if I have other questions? So that's a softer way to start, I suppose. But know which people are good connectors and which are not, like which are zun and will actually understand what you want and match you to the right person, and which are a bit like chapalang and will like just throw any person at you and then it's not meaningful lah. Yeah, so I think the quality of the person you go to get help is actually also important. Yeah. But actually going back to your school is very helpful. Yeah. Just ask them like, are there any grads who did this, who went to SMU and did this, for example, and then you get the lowdown from them, because I think they will naturally want to help.
Or supposedly the easier way is just look for Praxium and we do the work and go and find for you. Also can. Yeah. But otherwise,
every 5 minutes is his advertisement.
Don't have lah. You see the word already down here already.
Give you.
Yeah, but otherwise, thanks everyone for joining in this panel. We'll just end it here. We overran a bit because linguistics and lit people will have a lot to share and talk about all the time. So hopefully it was helpful for everyone. Look forward to the article that consolidates this information as well. So you get to sit through the long conversation that we had if you want. And I think we'll have the next panel discussion as well. If I'm not wrong, the next panel discussion we are organizing should be around the finance industry. That one will be pretty exciting because so much to unpack in that one. But yes, so thanks for joining us. I'm just going to end the live stream. For the rest of us who are in this call, I think we can still hang around a little bit more.